Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei, and I'm so excited to paint with you today in our watercolor journal series. So today I am cracking open a brand new watercolor journal. I use a Bao 6x9 watercolor journal book. You can look in the description for links to all the supplies and materials that I have, but this is my favorite. Sometimes it's hard to get. But I do have recommendations for some other books that I also use or have used in the past that I was happy with as well. But I try to keep a stock of these, always have a backup on hand because I know it takes time to get them sometimes. So that's my watercolor journal. We're going to be using Core, Qor by Golden today, but whatever watercolor paints you have, go for it. This is a mini palette, 12 colors, lots of different choices here, and we can mix pretty much anything from this color set. Then I have a couple different brushes. I have a size 10 Princeton Velvet Touch. I have a size 8 Silver Black Velvet, and I have a rigger brush here. And we're going to keep it simple in our first page. Try not to put too much pressure on us. A lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves with their watercolor journals, especially on things like the first page of the book or the last page of the book. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Every page can be treated equally, and just paint what you have in your heart that day, what you're feeling. And if you don't know what to paint, go back to something that you've been successful with before, and just know that it's just for practice, it's just for fun. Not every page has to be a masterpiece in every watercolor journal book. All right, so I am going to I think I'm just going to do some flowers today. Simple flowers for beginners. Always going back to the basics. Every once in a while can be lots of fun and also pretty soothing, especially if you're confident with them. Some people are not confident with them, and this will definitely be practice for them. All right, so I'm going to start with, what am I going to start with? I'm going to start out, usually I paint like my biggest flowers first and then start adding smaller and smaller different shapes. So I will start with some petaled flowers, some large petaled flowers. Let's see, what do we have here? We have some yellow. So the other thing I use is this large butcher tray for mixing my colors. So I don't take often directly from the palette to the page. I often take from the palette to the palette to the page. I'm just going to make some room for myself here for some other colors. So that is for beginners. A lot of times you go right from the palette to the page, and that's not always the best course of action. Sometimes you want to do that, but often you're going to make a puddle of color, dilute it with some water to get your starting color that you want. All right, so now that I have some room, let's start with some big, maybe yellow flowers. I have this nickel azo yellow in here. It's a very warm yellow. And then I also have some brown oxide. Let's make some like sunflowers. It's that time of year. And then we'll fill in with some other things. These are going to be super loose sunflowers, not very detailed at all. But, all right, so I'm going to start with the center of the sunflower. So my sunflower is going to be facing this way. I don't know if you catch that with like how I made that shape. And I'm going to do one kind of facing straight on over here. Just a round shape. I'm going to pick up some of my color right from the palette. Remember how I said like we don't always do that? Well, sometimes we do. And we want a super concentrated amount. And then I'm also going to pick up some of my burnt sienna. Throw some of that in there for some reddish brown color, and then I'm going to put some right in the middle. So there we go. We have some nice loose. And now I'm going to pick up my yellow. And you can go, actually I'm going to pick up some of my, this is a bismuth yellow. This is a lighter, cooler yellow. I'm going to start with this and then I'm going to add layers of the other yellow to give it some depth. As I'm coming in front, I'm actually going to make my petals kind of short and truncated, these little blobs in front. And the ones on the side, I'm going to let them kind of fold out. And even the ones back here, we're not going to see the whole petal. And it's because these are coming out at us, so we're kind of seeing them from the side angle, and we'll play that up a little bit with the bottom. Just throwing in some of this darker nickel azo yellow color in a few spots. There we go, fun little cheeky sunflower. And let's take, and I like ran my hand through that. You can see little splatters. That's okay. So I'm just using my whole brush. Tip, pressure, pull, and lift all at the same time. And I don't want all of my petals to be identical. I want some to be a little short and some to be a little thinner. Gives it a more natural look. I mean, you can be very illustrative and have everything be like perfect. But I'm making mine. All right, we're gonna go back in with the same like darker yellow, drop some of that in a few spots closer to the base. All right, let's grab some green. I have some beautiful sap green. I'm just going to throw some water in there and let that soften up a little bit. I think I have some on my tray over here too. Go. So sap green on this side, I'm going to kind of come around this way because sunflowers have this big kind of that greenery that holds everything together. It's pretty substantial. You can kind of see that from the side. And then we'll just have another big fat stem down here. You can throw in some leaves. They have big chunky leaves that are serrated or a little jagged on the edges. Take some more green. Add darker right to the edge there. All right, let's add some other flowers in here. You can always go back to the centers if you want. Take some of this darker brown color, add it to the center and kind of around the edges. right, so what other flowers are we going to add in here? Let's do some, like some stalk type flowers. So those can be really simple. I'm going to pull out some magenta and some purple maybe. I'm going to put them kind of around the flowers. So I'm going to imagine, just to make this easier for you as the viewer, that there's this central line kind of running behind, and all my buds are going to be kind of coming off this. They get smaller at the top and wider at the bottom, kind of like delphinium, I think. I'm terrible with names of flowers. So if I ran one up this way, maybe I'll only see the top of it, and like something out here. So let's add some of those in. So we're putting in just a light kind of stippling in of these buds. On both sides, nice and loose. And then you can always go back with darker color right from the palette and just drop it in while things are still wet. And lastly, I'm actually going to switch my brush here. I'm going to go with a slightly smaller brush just because I have some finer work here. I'm going to put in my stem. And I'm going to run through the center, but there's going to be areas where I'm going to skip. So this area where the bud goes all the way over the stem, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to let some of that green wash in. I think it gives it a nice, pretty look. At the top, I'm going to add some more greenery where buds haven't even popped yet. There we go. I'm going to do that all over again. I'm going to do this one in pink over here too, or magenta. This is Quinacridone Magenta. And these are super easy. They're such an organic, like fun little shape, and you don't have to be too serious about them. I'm literally just dabbing blobs around that central core, adding in a little darker color, not being too controlling, and then it's going to turn out like this beautiful flower here. Coming back to my green, and a little suggestion goes a long way in creating. So I just have to have like one or two little pieces of stem sticking through, and that communicates to the viewer that it runs all the way up behind all of the buds. Let's do a different color for this central one. Let's do purple. I have a Dioxazine purple in here. This is a super strong color. I want to water it down for my first layer. Go super wide at the base here. I'm going to sneak in like just a little peak of color like between these petals. And again, the power of suggestion. It just suggests that there's some color behind there. And that's all you need. We'll make this one pretty robust at the bottom. All right, let's grab some of that color right from the palette. Ooh, core is super... what's the word? Vigorous. When it comes to wet on wet, it moves really fast and furious. So you just got to be careful with that. You have a little more control with other brands of paint when it comes to wet on wet. I love the movement of core. I just have to remember it's going to take off the minute I touch that paint too. So I'm going to sneak a little stem in here, a little bit right there, a little here, And we'll give it a little more greenery at the top. And you can throw a little green like at the base of, like what would be the base of the buds. There we go. Lovely. All right, let's keep filling in with some other littler flowers. What other colors can we introduce or shapes? This over here, I'm just going to take my clean. Just noticing that this is kind of still doing some work over here with these darker colors we put in. I'm going to soften these little bits, these little bleeds a little bit. And I'm going to pull up some color into these petals. You don't have to do this step. Mine just happened to have some funky bleeds here that I wanted to give a little bit of love to. There, that's all I'm going to do, I think. It might come back. The great thing that I love about watercolor is you can think you're done, and you might be done, but then you can come back to it, and it might benefit from another layer, a little more detail, and you can always layer on top of. But just remember, you can't cover up bottom layers. So if something happened that you don't like on the first layer, and you want to cover it up, that's not going to happen in watercolor for the most part, unless you're like trying to cover up, I don't know, a really light wash of yellow with a really dark Payne's gray or something like that. But they're still going to interact with each other. Watercolor is transparent, so whatever you put on the top layer is still going to interact and be affected by the bottom layer. So just remember that. But you can definitely go in and add like more texture to things. Another layer to deepen vibrancy. There's lots you can do. And that's kind of what I'm doing on this layer here. Adding some more details. All right, I'm good. I'm good. Walk away. Okay. What other little flowers can we put in here? Let's think about this for 1 second. You know, I kept talking about let's do simple flowers, but I think I'm going to add in another little more complex, like wide petal flower to fill in some of these big spaces. And I cannot remember the name of it, so please forgive me. But it has these big, wide, they almost look like, I'm terrible, not petunias, but they're on a stalk. It will come to me at some point. But basically, I did this one in a tutorial before. We're going to use, I think, some similar colors. Or actually, you know, let's mute some of our colors. So we'll keep them in the same family. Let's take our magenta. And I'm actually going to make like an orange color. I'm going to mix it with my yellow. I'm going to make this like orangey, this burnt orangey color here. All right, so I'm going to put these on a stalk that's going to be like right through the center here, but these are going to be like big flowers like this. They'll be like a little trumpeted one, so I'm going to have to work around these other things that are already in there. So I just drew those on there. You should erase those. Don't draw them on. You don't need them. I'm going to work around a center. So I'm going to have a center in the middle, this little button. Then I'm going to just drop in more color in make it darker towards the middle. Do another one of those up here. Don't worry, we'll put the middle in later. All right, we're going to work our way down here. And just working around the objects. Go back up here and add some more. This has dried quite a bit. And we'll do one here. This one's going to be the toughest. It's got to go around all of these petals of the sunflower. And the middle's going to be right behind that petal. So that's hard for your brain to kind of think about. All right, so now I'm going to go back in and I am going to add the centers. Actually, I'm gonna do our stems first. Let's do our stems while those dry a little bit more. So again, just putting our stalk up through here. Can add some foliage, some leaves. And while we're waiting for those to dry, let's just add some random foliage in here just to fill in space. And you can change your color green. You can add a little bit more blue to it to make it a little cooler green if you want, like this. See the difference? You can overlap your greenery. All different shapes and sizes. All right, so these are pretty dry. Now let's go back into the centers. I'm going to make the centers yellow. So I'm going to take my bismuth yellow. I'm going to go right into the center here. You can't see that center. And then I'm going to take some of my burnt sienna on these because it's got kind of a similar quality to this orangey pink color I put in there. I'm going to go around the edges. This one's a little, take my brush, a little puddly for me. There we go. And these I'm going to add another layer down here. There, now that looks really full and bright and cheery. We're gonna let that dry. Let's blend these out a little bit. And then if there's any other colors you want to add in there, you definitely can with some smaller flowers. I like to add sometimes with just my brown and water. So almost like these little nubs of like pussy willow. Just taking brown so they have a center reed. And just touching the base of, so I put water down and then just touching the base of that with the brown. Can be very effective. You can add that in. And you can keep going and going. This is pretty full and lots of space is taken up, so this was fun. Thank you for joining me on my first page of my new watercolor journal for some fun, easy breezy, loose watercolor flowers. I'm Shayna Cersei. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials that I used in this video as well as use regularly. And also leave a comment if you'd like, if you have a question or have a comment on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might also like to follow this watercolor journal journey. Thanks y'all. Take care and happy painting.